Well, good morning, everyone. I appreciate those who are attending live today. Welcome to the Fox Selling System webinar series, where we are all about improving your selling skills. Tom, I could just hear you say that in your radio DJ voice. I don't think I could do that justice. Although I will say today, we are all about helping people close more sales, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if they can't overcome objections, then how can they close, right?
You can't.
Or you just can't do it. So you just can't do it. Today, we are going to help you not just overcome objections, but understand the reasons why most people will retreat. And hopefully at the end of this 1 hour or so meeting, you'll walk away with a lot more confidence when you are faced with a close. So joining us today, in addition to myself, I'm Jim Kaleka. I've been working with Tom Fox for over 10 years. My experience background is in the distribution side of things, worked with wholesalers for over 30 years. For the last 7 or so, I've been working directly with Tom and helping people with their online platform with the Fox Selling System. And also joining us is Tom's son, his middle son, Sean Fox. He's a great guy. He's a great golfer. I will say that.
You can't get over how good he is.
No, it's really impressive. Somebody you would think he's beyond his years.
If you can come in second place in the Fox Open, you have got to be really good.
Well, yeah, twice in a row.
Right, yeah.
Twice in a row. So the reigning second place winner.
Enough.
Winner. Did you say enough?
I said enough.
Enough. Okay, I'm going to turn it over. I'll let Sean introduce himself with his own accolades. Sean.
Yes, I'm Sean Fox. I've been with Fox Sales Coaching and the Fox Selling System for just over 2 years now. Nick, good to see you. It was fun to meet you in person last week at MBWA in Vegas. I saw we had a number. There were actually probably 15 to 20 folks that registered this morning. So there'll probably be some folks trickling on, hopefully, if not watching this on the recorded version once it's uploaded into the platform in the next couple of days. But I live in Chicago. Primary responsibilities are in account management as well as business development and sales. So excited to be here this morning. This is one of my favorite topics because this is something that we all deal with, no matter what industry. If you're in sales, handling or dealing with objections is something that comes up every single day. So this is always a great topic to discuss. And hopefully there's a bunch more folks that join us in the next couple minutes.
Yeah, Sean, well, thank you. And then it's not, you mentioned, that's a good point about it affecting every industry. It affects us in our personal lives as well. I mean, if we can learn and master overcoming objections with our significant others, our lives are going to be much more happy. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the person who probably is better at this than anything else he's better at, except maybe playing golf. The actual winner of the last 2 Fox Open golf championships, Tom Fox.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Sean. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here. This is an important topic, and one of the major takeaways I want from this particular program, Jim, would be just the omniscience, which I know that you guys both know what that means. The awareness, the omniscience, the knowledge that every sales call, it would be important that every salesperson expects every sales call to get confronted with an objection. And yet, Jim, I wonder how many people as we speak in our industry are selling right now and blindsided because an objection just got thrown in the way and they're not ready for it and they get stymied because of it. I imagine that's a pretty high number.
Oh yeah, and I think you will probably talk about just how high a number that is. But I could say that they might be blindsided. But the other thing is they may not be blindsided, but just lack the awareness of how to actually overcome it. I mean, they've never either been taught it, they've never really had been armed with the skills at how to combat it. A lot of which is in the preparation, which I know we're going to talk about. But no, it's really pretty amazing that this has gone on as long as it has in selling.
Yeah. I just can remember back when I was with the distributor. For those of you who don't know my background, I'm a lifer in the beverage business, and my dad worked at a brewery. And so growing up, I was in the industry. In college, I worked for a distributor. 6 years out of college, I worked for a distributor, 10 years on the supplier side. Jim, I go back to my distributor days, and I know for a fact, I was probably not thinking of a bigger picture when I was selling. It was something where you had your objectives and you knew what you wanted to get accomplished, and you went in and sometimes you got what you wanted, but probably reflecting back, most of the time when I was selling, if I got an objection, yeah, I'm a pretty competitive, aggressive guy to begin with. So I'm sure I tried to overcome it, but if I wasn't ready for it and I didn't have a process to actually overcome it and handle it, what are we trying to do? We're trying to keep the call going, because you can't close the sale if it doesn't continue. So there's a lot of people, I don't want to give any stats away because we're going to be running a poll here in a few minutes, but you can't close the sale if you retreat. So I know I would have tried to overcome it, and I probably overcame some, probably using relationship selling and asking for favors, not necessarily. I mean, I worked for an AB distributor, Jim, as you did, and we had 65% market share. I didn't need to ask for favors, and I did. I didn't need. We made our retailers so much money, and they made money. I mean, but our brands made them a lot of money. I don't say that obnoxiously, but I say that because I didn't need to ask for favors, and yet, that's what relationship selling is. And I think it's important to define that. So I define relationship selling as someone, despite whatever value they might be bringing to their customers, if they sold in their objectives. But the relationship seller doesn't focus on that. They just focus on the personal relationship and asking for favors and leveraging that. And again, I have no problem if we have such a good relationship and people trust us.
Mhm.
And the movie Jerry Maguire, You Had Me at Hello. I have no problem with that. But that can't be our strategy. That can't be the way we go to market. We got to go to market with this idea of bringing value. So we'll get into it. It's a great topic. And I really think, Jim, the mature sales professional sees the bigger picture of selling, recognizes what's happening, and they can get through this more often than those who don't understand the bigger picture are going to. So we want to put all of the clients we have in a position to close more sales because they are aware of what's coming and they can handle it.
Yeah, I in some ways I think that the novice salesperson, somebody who's
a better word. That's a better word. I use mature, immature. That's probably wrong words. I don't mean it the way it might sound.
Yeah, no, I understand, but just I think that's a good clarification, because
it is.
I think that you're whatever. So, but the point is, the novice may have a little bit of a leg up, because if you haven't developed bad habits, or you're just early on in your career in selling, and you grasp and understand, comprehend the benefit of understanding how to handle an objection and the way it can lead to more sales, I don't think you're going to get caught in that rut where the relationship factor kind of kicks in. And one of the things I don't know that we've necessarily done in the past is almost like put a stop sign at the point at which an objection comes up, and somebody who's used to relationship selling, what they do, versus somebody who is prepared to handle objection, what they would do. Because I think it's at that specific point that the decision has to get made. Do you want to go down the road of retreat and back off, or do you want to actually continue down the road of helping the customer? So that's all I had to say about that, Tom.
That's pretty cool. And then Sean, I know you shared some news about Athletic Brewing signing what would be considered our arch rival quarterback in CJ Stroud. But I can only imagine Athletic had to overcome some objections, because that greedy son of a gun probably put a gun to their head and asked for more money and more money. And Athletic probably stood strong and overcame the objection and made CJ realize just what an opportunity he had in front of him. And they got the deal done. So I thought that was an important little parallel, Sean, to give props.
I saw that on LinkedIn this morning. Yeah.
Give some props to our friends at Athletic, which is pretty
cool.
Well, I hope it's distracting for him. I hope that whatever amount of money he may make,
he's gonna use it in and use that and then take his eye off the ball, right?
Yeah, exactly. Literally. Like you
Cool.
need to
All
see
right.
this.
So obviously we've got a schedule here and we're coming down to the home stretch. So we really appreciate those that were able to join. And those are we know a lot of people are able to view these in archive at your convenience. This is a great topic. And then next month, we're going to get into really some executional things around some of the tools that we have within the Fox selling system around building sell sheets. I think people are going to definitely enjoy that as well. So I know we don't have a huge live audience, but I think it's still important. And I'm not sure, Sean, if I do this or you do this as far as the polls, but I am curious.
No, it's Sean logged in as me. Okay, the identity theft, because
It is identity theft.
it's
Oh,
identity.
I forgot.
I can understand why he would want to.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't he? I mean, that would be everyone's dream. Why would you not want to be drummer extraordinaire, Jim? Don't call me Neil Peart Kaleka.
Don't ever call me that.
All right. So what percentage of all sales calls get confronted? I may have tipped the hand here a little bit, but I'm curious to see what people come up with.
Are you launching the poll, Tom? I mean, Sean?
I did.
He did.
I don't see it.
Well, maybe you weren't supposed to see it, Jim.
Hmm.
Well, how are we doing there, Shawnee? You got any?
I think we're good. Hey, Nick, did you just unmute?
Yeah, I was just saying it came up.
Okay, cool.
All right. So 90% is accurate. 90%, not 100. I mean, sometimes we walk in and the features and benefits that we present are so compelling that we don't get an objection. That would be great. We should do everything we can not to get an objection. But, you know, just the way I think a lot of retailers are wired, they're going to push back in hopes. I think in a couple of things, Jim. I think they push back in hopes that maybe the salesperson goes away. They push back that maybe they can get a better deal. So some of those things are just things that we should just, when it happens 9 out of 10 times, we should expect it. There shouldn't be any surprise if we get one, because it happens all the time.
I know it's really astonishing when you think about it.
Yeah, it is.
You know, I would think that first and foremost, when you get an objection, and I know we're going to get into solving it, but it's not only just should you not expect it, but it doesn't always mean that they don't want to buy. You know, many times an objection comes up, and it's really just tell me more. I mean,
Hey, what does Big Frank say? What does Big Frank say?
Listen, let them talk. Let them.
Yeah, he says he goes, I love objections because when you get an objection, they're telling you how they want to be sold to.
Yeah.
I actually think there's a lot to that.
There is.
Much as I don't really want to give, you know, my guy the credit. I think he's got something there.
Yeah, he does. The king, what would you say? The king? I mean, this is
I'm going to
unbelievable.
change it like 50 times.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, that's good. So I guess we've gotten our point of you know, that's one of the big things I want everyone in Paz, you know, as you are training your teams, boy, you have a wonderful opportunity just to make this abundantly clear. It's coming. It's coming, right?
Yeah, I don't want to be second place. That's for sure.
Amen to that. I'm with you there, brother. I know it. Yeah, I know what that's like. I know what that's like. Hopefully CJ Stroud is going to know what that's like later in the year.
If the shoe fits, wear it.
You're right. The horseshoe. Right. All right. Now we are going to obviously speak about this whole idea of, you know, trying to avoid objections, but they're coming. So we've got to be able to effectively navigate through that in order to close more sales. That is just the way it is. And I love, Jim, I love my guy, Marlon. You know, if we have such a compelling deal, we have to be confident that we're going to get that Hollywood producer to give Frankie, whatever, Johnny the part. You know, we just know it's going to work. Just like we know if we're selling any of the products that our clients are selling, we're making them an offer that they shouldn't refuse. He can't, only Marlon can get away with saying, I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse, but everybody else can say, I'm going to make an offer that they shouldn't refuse. And I think that's an important component, right?
Yes, I'm sorry, I just distracted from the movie because I'm just thinking to myself how many quotes came out of that movie that people continue to use to this day, that they could quote it.
Leave the guns, take the cannolis.
Phenomenal. That was ad-lib, by the way.
Was it really?
It wasn't in the script.
Oh gosh, what a great movie. It's one of those, it's probably one of a dozen movies that if I'm channel surfing and it comes up, I'm stuck. And it's a long movie. It's a long movie.
Well, the first one is actually not that long time-wise. It seems like it is, but when you add the sequel to it, it becomes long. I actually think they should show this in kindergarten as a means of negotiating. And then maybe, we have more successful people. I know it might be a little much for kindergartners.
That is great. All right, let's go back into another poll. Let's follow up with that first poll in terms of what percentage of all sales calls get confronted with an objection. But there's also research that indicates what percentage of all salespeople, when they get an objection, actually leave. They retreat. So launch the poll, Shawnee. This is disturbing research.
Yes, it is.
This is disturbing. For anyone who manages people, and even for anyone who's selling, it would be important to have everyone recognize, I'm not going to be in this camp. I'm not. I might have to retreat eventually and live another day. We don't want to damage a relationship and ultimately go, okay, so boy, gotcha. It's actually 60%. It's not 80, not 4 to 5, but 3 out of 5 will leave. They won't even try to overcome. And Jim, what does that say about someone's confidence? If 3 out of 5 just go, you know what? First little pushback, out.
Yeah. Again, I think it really is a lack of awareness of the total purpose of why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. From our approach is we want to help the retailer.
Yeah.
So if that truly is what your objective is, and you're confident that what you have to offer is helpful to the retailer, then why would you retreat? And I think it's just that, not just a lack of confidence due to the fact that they've never really understood the opportunity that was in front of them when they received an objection.
Yeah, no, you're right. 100%.
That's the fundamental mindset shift that
we have to
I still struggle with, but knowing that you can help kind of helps with that, just dynamic of not giving up. Whereas retreating is kind of like thinking, hey, I'm trying to sell them something. I'm focused on my agenda. Therefore, if I get an objection, I want to live, to fight another day. I'm not going to push too hard here, as opposed to knowing that you can. And that's just a mindset shift.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And really, when you think about it, I think that's it. And we'll talk about the bigger picture of selling, because I think it's really, really, really important to think that through. It's like, think of a relationship. We could get into a lot of the psychology around why someone would retreat. I think it has a lot to do with confidence. If you didn't have full belief that you could help, or let me say it the other way, if you had full belief you could help, you would never immediately retreat. You wouldn't. The fear of failure, even the idea that I'm going to damage a relationship if I push back a little bit. I could make the argument that the exact opposite would happen. If you retreat, then all the help you were going to provide your customer now can't happen, isn't going to happen. That could, and that should hurt a relationship. So to not stay with it a little longer based on the fact that we know we can help. But Jim, you know how many times I've asked this question. And the question is, and I say it very unemotionally, can you help your customer? I usually ask that pretty early in a lot of the classroom trainings that we do. And you've seen audiences when I ask, they're kind of stone-faced. They kind of think about it, and then they gradually start to go, yeah, I think I can help. Yeah, I can help. Versus jumping up on the table, throwing their fists in the air. Hell yes, I can help. We never see that.
No.
Because I just don't think people think about that bigger picture of like, what, listen, the transactional success we're looking for is obvious. We all want to go in and sell in our objectives. That's obvious. But to not think of it bigger, okay, so what would this mean to the customer? How are they going to benefit from this? Because if we think about that, especially if we knew their need, but we know that preparation, just simply identifying what revenue and profit our suggestions are going to deliver, ought to drive a lot of confidence to say, if they say no, then they just haven't understood the impact yet. That's on me. I got to figure out the best way to articulate this in the way where this knowledge gets transferred. They realize how much we can help.
Well, yeah.
So
if you ask the questions, or the question, how many of you think that the retailer can help you? I mean, I think the hands would just shoot up to the ceiling.
Yeah.
Because really that is what the approach is. If your relationship selling, that's really kind of what the approach that you're taking. It means you have not necessarily uncovered the need. You're not leveraging knowing what the need is.
Right.
To be able to help you sell. And you are looking for, it's like, yeah, but, as opposed to the way we do it, which you're going to.
Well, no, it's a great point. And, I've told this story before, but I think it's worth telling again. Several years ago, I had a client that was like, hey, Fox, I need you to come in and do some sales training. Okay, what are you looking for? Well, we need help with handling objections. Okay, we can do that. And I said, all right, so week before the seminar, the client was like, can you send me the deck? Sure. So kind of put the finishing touches on it, sent the deck. I get a phone call like immediately. Hey, I'm not sure you understood what I was looking for. I said, oh, yeah, I think I do. I said, what's your concern? He goes, well, I just saw the deck. And he goes, you've got a lot of information about recon. You got a lot of information in here about listening and uncovering needs. You got a lot of information about the pitch. And you do have some information about handling objections, but I thought I made it clear I want a program on handling objections. I said, no. And we will. I said, we got to talk about the best way to overcome an objection is to not get one. So we're going to talk a little bit about those steps 2, 3, and 4. The bulk of our time will be on 5, but we have to get into what needs to go into the best way to handle an objection is to make sure that we've walked the perimeter of the outlets, restaurant, store, looking for plan B, plan C, looking for shelf space, looking for what the competition's doing, how they're managing their business. I mean, we have to solve the objection, which means we have to have knowledge as to how they manage their business. We have to. So we got to spend some time on recon. What would give someone confidence to stay with it would be an awareness of what their needs are. So if we know their needs, we're like, well, wait, I know you want more profit. I told you that you're going to make $4 a unit. That's 40% more profit than off some other mainstream, products. This is something that's going to help you, and if we know that, then that should fuel a lot of confidence. And then if we actually have a pitch that's compelling, if we do 2, 3, and 4 really well, we will get less objections. I'm not saying you won't get any. You're going to get a lot, but you won't get as many. But when you do get them, A, you're ready for it. And B, we've planned it out with the recon step, and we can focus on number 3, because what's more important to the customer? Is it their objection in number 5, or is it their need in number 3? Like if someone has a goal or a KPI, it's not even close.
You just recently sold your house, bought it.
Yes.
Did you go through a realtor?
We did.
Yeah. So when you were talking with the retail realtor, did they want to know what you were looking for in terms of, a new place to live?
Yeah.
Did they show you something that was completely different than what you told them that you needed?
I would say a couple of places were kind of out in left field.
Yeah. And I think
He used my-
This is one of Sean's buddies who is.
Yeah, he stood in my wedding. He was my
Yeah.
roommate for 4 years in college.
yeah, good friend.
Easy on the guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So the point being, I think we've all had buyer's remorse. And I think that, why would buyer's remorse ever come up? It's people buying things that they really were sold as opposed to something that they wanted and that they needed. And really understanding, if we just put ourselves in our client's shoes and say, would we want to be sold something as opposed to having them understand what it is that we're looking for and then try to match that up? And maybe what you're looking for is unrealistic in terms of what the price you're willing to pay or whatever that might be. That's a different story. But by and large, nothing is more annoying to me when I'm trying to buy something that requires, some consideration on the part of the person I'm working with, when there is them trying to sell me something that I didn't want. I didn't ask. I was very specific in the process of telling them what in many cases, you have to tell them what you need.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be
Yep.
great if the retailer came in, when we walked in, like you say that, Tom?
Right.
How often does it happen where the retailer comes in? Oh, nice to see you. By the way, I'd like a display over there by the cooler on the corner. I cleared some space out for you. I had my person who stocks the shelves clear out complete. There's a 4
Happens
by
every
4.
day. Happens.
Yeah, it's never happened.
Said no salesperson ever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. Anyway, so obviously a lot goes into it. So when you think about the whole profits process, the whole idea of showing this slide, boxing out the majority of the steps just tells you how much goes into. If we're going to have any chance to overcome an objection, we really need to recon. We really need to know their need. We better have a compelling pitch. So when we actually do have to overcome the objection, we're poised for the steps of 2, 3, and 4. We are absolutely just poised, which is kind of cool. So this idea of again, so, why is this mindset, what is really required in terms of mindset? You look at those three bullet points and, the confident salesperson can be aggressive. The confident salesperson can be poised. That's why we underline the confidence. So, but that has to be earned. Preparation earns confidence. Knowing their need is going to earn your own confidence. Having a compelling pitch is going to earn that confidence. That fuels us staying with it longer. It's just a mindset. But again, I'm wondering how few people, as we speak right now, are on the street selling where they understand the bigger picture of like, I'm here to help. And oh, by the way, I can help. I know it. I'm underwhelmed by how many times I asked a question and I just don't get much of a feel good that people have that mindset. I just don't think they do.
Well, they have to have been exposed to it at some point in time. And if they're
Yeah,
not,
you're right. You'd have to be exposed.
or the organization that they work for, represent, are so focused on here's what we need to get accomplished. I mean, they have their MBOs, whatever supplier has been breathing down their neck, or they're long on product in a warehouse that they have to get out before it goes out of date. There's so many things that the sales rep is put in a position not necessarily to be as successful as they could be, due to the culture of the organization that they work with too. I mean, I think that's a big factor.
No, agree. So you talk about that word exposed, and I do think that's an appropriate time to bring this up. So how do people learn? How would people ever get that confidence? Well, I think we got to expose to them this bigger picture so they can understand really the objective of selling. The bigger picture of selling is really the idea of helping. And oh, by the way, we're still selling. We're still accomplishing what we want. It's more of a mutual path along with our customer that we take together versus us kind of selling, and that, I think that's going to take, some time for people to kind of understand that in order to start to build that confidence, build that skill to where they start to get really, really good. Doesn't take long, but I think the exposure, Jim, and I just don't, when I ask the question, can you help? And we don't get like the immediate, like high energy answers. It just tells me that people, and you said it a minute ago, people haven't been exposed to this.
This was one of my most memorable slides from the first time you came in and did training for us, because the concept of it, of how people learn and how they can become an expert And it just doesn't apply to handling objections, Tom. I mean, everything that you teach in your coursework really centers around the idea that the more frequent exposure you have, then how that process of becoming an expert accelerates, which is why we as an industry have to be repetitive about the things that we say and that we do.
Yeah.
Knowing full well that if the more exposure people have, the quicker they're going to come to the point of expertise.
Yeah. So you'll be interested to know, I actually saw this slide for the first time in the late 90s. I was in national accounts calling on, well, I was running national accounts, and one of our biggest customers was Winn-Dixie in the South. And Winn-Dixie made anyone who called on Winn-Dixie had to go through this core category management class. They had to go. So my national account manager who lived in Florida, who called on Winn-Dixie, was like, hey, I need a budget. And I was like, it was like $1,500 or $2,000 to go. And I'm like, I want to go. He goes, you're going to go? I go, yeah, I want to go. I want to go to this class. So we had 2 seats, and it was some company out of Cincinnati that this guy was a former Procter & Gamble guy, and he was doing a lot of category management consulting. So he taught this class, and it was like one of his first slides. And he was like, this is how people learn. And I actually changed some of I didn't want to steal it. So I kind of changed a little bit of the makeup, but the point, it had an impression on me, Jim, of like, so when you say you remember that, I remember it, and I could tell you the guy's name. I remember the facilitator's name because of this slide.
Yeah. No,
and I think it also helps our clients understand, if you bring us in once a year and you think that one exposure is going to be a difference maker, and that's the beauty of the whole Fox selling system, that there's, just frequent exposure to the e-learning, to the live training, which we're doing now, to, the whole idea of a sell sheet generator. The scorecard is a constant reminder, constant exposure. So anyway, I think that's a really cool point. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to get into empathy for any great length, but again, if we're going to overcome an objection, we better have a root understanding of what that customer's agenda is, because their agenda, nowhere, Jim, on their agenda is their list of objections. Nowhere. And I think that's an important point. So when we think about the customer, we should be thinking about anticipating what objection they might give us. That's a good thing to do. And again, I imagine every one of our clients that are on this call, they either have Karma or they have LilyPad, and they're able to track that, which I think would be a good idea. What's the common objection you get? It won't be difficult to anticipate if there's a theme with certain customers. So it's a good thing to do. Having that empathy, I think, is critical.
Sure. I was just saying, I wouldn't suggest that they write down every objection in the front of their book and rehearse it in their car necessarily every day. But if
Frank would be disappointed.
Well, I know, I mean, he has a point. And I think that one of the things that is pretty obvious after you've been in this industry for as long as we have, is that there are not a lot of objections that are out there. So it's not as though we can't anticipate them. I mean, we get some of the same objections in most of the calls that we make. At retail, it's space. I mean, that's probably number one, is space, or that doesn't sell. That, people don't come in, they don't ask for that. Point being, if you know what these objections may be, or you have a good idea of what they might be and come up, there's no reason to not be prepared for it. If you're calling on a wholesaler and they're saying, listen, we have too many SKUs in the warehouse as it is, or the last time we brought one of these products in, it didn't sell. Shame on you for not expecting that to come up, prior to, so you can be ready for it.
Yep. No, you're right. So again, we talk about all these things that go into handling an objection. I do think empathy has a huge place in helping understand our customer at a greater, higher level, which allows us to focus back on their agenda, because that's a big part of handling an objection, is keeping them focused on their agenda and get their focus off of their objection. I think that's kind of the key. So what could their agenda look like? Well, let's first look at our agenda. Our agenda is going to look like all the things that we're trying to do around new items, promotions, pricing, space, merchandising, all these different things. But if you could look at like a figurative agenda, or even a literal agenda, like what you're seeing here, move everything down one spot, insert at the top, So the number one item on my agenda is to understand my customer's agenda. It will go a long way to making it more of a habit, which I think is kind of key. Because what could their agenda look like? It's going to look like this slide here, but they're not all created equal. So for the customer you're calling on, what's most important? Is it growing their revenue and increasing the category, the size of the category, increasing sales? Is that number one on their agenda? Or is it making more money? Is that number one? Or is it, trying to increase, the average spend, the average size of the transaction, check size for on-premise, basket size for off-premise? Is it trying to cater to this target consumer that they're trying to attract by enhancing the image and making, the overall experience really tied in with the services and the categories that matter to that target consumer? The whole idea of bringing more people in, is that number one on their agenda? Or is it making the experience very, very memorable, positive experience, more of an exciting experience? So when you think about retailers' needs, these are the 6. And right now we've got, we've got suppliers that are on this call, or so if you're thinking about distributor, what's the distributor agenda? It's even more narrow. We call that GPS. What could their agenda be? Well, are they trying to grow their business, increase their performance over last year? Is that their number one agenda item? Is it making more money? Is it growing their share? GPS, growth, profit share. So understanding their agenda might seem like a big deal, but it's not. It's frankly asking the question, what are your most important KPIs? For wholesale, that would be, you're going to get GPS. You're going to get one of those 3, maybe all of them. With retail, if you say, what are your KPIs? They might look at you like you got 3 eyes in your head. Some retailers are not as sophisticated. So getting more into, hey, what are some of the things you're trying to get accomplished? Maybe not as a sophisticated decision maker, but it's going to come down to one of these 6. And so, believe me, you're going to close more sales and overcome more objections if we know what their agenda is, right?
Yeah, I can remember having a conversation with the principal of one of the distributors I worked with about why we were spending this much time and focus and energy on craft when the actual case volume that it generated was not nearly equal to the amount of time we were spending on it. And he looked at me and he said, it's more than that. It's not just that we need to play in that arena and be relevant. It's that even the 3 or 5 case drop, if you add a higher margin item onto that, the profit that is generated per drop that the driver is delivering makes a big, big difference over time. And I never really thought about it. I was looking at it as a case. The driver made the same amount of money in this particular case. Maybe it's different in some organizations, but just understanding that you can, as a craft distributor or a high-end margin, that you can raise the gross profit of every delivery that's made when their salespeople sell one of your products. That's pretty powerful, especially if you multiply that times the week, the day, the number of routes, the number of accounts over the course of the year. It's pretty compelling.
Like it. All right. So what is the evolution of a sales professional? Now, I underlined professional, Jim, because this is not the evolution of a salesperson who doesn't have the vision to be a professional. If we're just going through the motions, then we're not a sales professional. But whoever's a sales professional starts off with relationship, which again, we're not indicating we shouldn't have a good relationship, but we got to move past this idea of asking for favors and not, being cognizant of the value that we are going to bring to the table. Next, transactional is better than relationship because we now have a good handle on the impact we're going to make. We're focused on our selling objectives. We're focused on the benefits it's going to bring, but there's still a missing piece. And the highly customer focused professional is more around a consultative approach, which goes back to the 4 letters of the most important aspect of selling. That's help the customer. And that's what the consultant does. What does a consultant do? Well, the 3 of us have a right to speak on this because what do we do as consultants? We identify problems and we solve problems. And yeah, Pass, go ahead, pal.
I was gonna ask a question and, just thinking, the amount of sales people out there, where do you think they stand for the majority? Are they more relationship or transactional? Because actually,
Yeah, what do you think, Paz? You're really close to this. I'd love to get your thought. What do you? I have an opinion. I'll share it, but what's your opinion?
I think it's the one in the middle. I think it's transactional.
Yeah. Well, I think your organization is transactional, moving to consultative. I do. I think the average person in our industry is still borderline relationship transactional. But I think your team is well beyond that, in large part because of your advocacy.
Well, thank you.
Jim, you agree? Sean, you agree? I mean, Sean, you've seen relationship selling at its height.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the easy way out. I mean, a lot of people, and naturally, I mean, like, relationships and friendships, they're not a bad thing.
No.
It's always interesting when you hear someone talk about like the number one key to sales or the best part about sales is relationships, because they matter, but you don't want it to turn into a crutch where if you don't have that relationship, or someone, maybe a buyer is super transactional, or maybe there's a language barrier, whatever it is, but if you can't develop that relationship, then you're quote unquote, screwed at a lot of accounts because you don't know how to sell, or you're not focused on being consultative or anything like that.
Yeah.
Tom, we get more pushback on this topic during training than really I think any, because people have become convinced that having a good relationship with their client is critical to the whole transaction. And I would say that, having a good relationship with anybody is preferable to having a poor relationship,
Yeah.
or none whatsoever, clearly. And that there is a benefit to having that you can actually leverage, along the way, regardless of your relationship, transactional or consultative. The fact of the matter is that in our industry, we are typically, it's not a one and done.
No.
So we can develop a relationship over time, and so it's going to happen. And I think that the mindset of people is that as that relationship improves, then it's going to improve their position with them. And as they like them, they see that they give them good service, et cetera, that's going to result in a sale. But at the end of the day, it still is focused on them helping you and not you helping them necessarily.
Yeah.
You're just asking for them to help you. I think people struggle with just the idea of what it means to relationship sell. You say,
well, I think it's a great point, and I give myself a grade of F- in sometimes bringing this topic up, because you've seen people get mad.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm threatening what they have always believed in, and I don't do a good job of explaining that I'm not suggesting that we can't have a great friendship, a great relationship, because but I want to define the term relationship. I mean, the way you and I would define a great relationship, Sean, obviously all of us would say, you can't ever accuse yourself of having a great relationship with someone if you didn't know their need.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that eliminates 95% of all salespeople right there. I mean, 95% of all salespeople, I guarantee you, if you put a gun to their head and said, what is this customer's need? They don't know. They might guess, and their guess might be right, but it might not be. And it probably won't be.
I think and again, you guys have, Jim, you worked at the distributor, and all of our clients are doing this on a daily basis, but the 20 or 30 instances I've had to do work with or ride with so far, 80 or 90% of the time, someone will kind of walk in, do some recon, in the account for 3-5 minutes, walk up and say, hey, how things going? And then basically, how often do you see someone, it's like, hey, what's up? Hey, how you doing? And like, you're just saying that it's almost like you're not trying to get what the answer is. It's just kind of another way to say hi. Right. And then as they do that, hey, how you doing? Hey, I brought some samples in today. This is what I'm focused on, and this is what, our objectives are this month. And you just kind of go completely into your pitch. Most of the time it's all feature focused, not necessarily benefit focused. And that's, what everyone does. So if someone is actually trying to drill down or ask that second question or understand or grasp what the need is or what that person's focused on or what their goals are for the next month or couple months, that kind of stuff is almost that pattern interrupt that's different. That's going to help you stand out.
I think,
I like
can I,
that.
can I add something?
Yeah, please.
I think for me, like people get relationship and favor mixed up.
I think that's right.
You know, I think we all need relationships and we all need, I think we've all touched on that on this call, but I think, there's a big gap between favor and fact base, right? When you're asking somebody for a favor, hey, do me a favor, can you bring in this product? Versus here's why you need this product, according to your needs. And that's for me, I've seen that time and time again. And I think that's why people get so defensive when they talk about relationship, because they automatically, they're not associating, the two.
Well, I think that's a great point. And that does go back to the two questions I would ask. If you think you have a great relationship, then number one, do you know their need? If you don't ever say you have a great relationship because you don't. Number two, have you prepared to the extent that you understand the impact you're going to make? Because if you really like this person, wouldn't you try to help them versus them? And Jim, this is morbid, right? But I mean, I always use this like analogy. What if we were at our own funeral and all of the retailers I called on were sitting around my casket talking about me going, that knucklehead, he'd come in asking for favors. And I was glad I could help. I was glad, he'd come in wanting displays because he had a chance to go on a trip or a chance to make, I was really glad I could help him. That's not the legacy anyone should want. It should be, as they're sitting around, you know what? That jerk, he sometimes made me so mad, but you know what? That guy made me money. He made me so much damn money. I will always remember this. He made me so much money. He could be tough. I didn't like it. He wouldn't leave sometimes, but boy, at the end of the day, I'm glad he called on me.
All our customers hated him.
Well, Jim, how many times as a manager have you heard the retailer say, "Oh, we love your rep. He never asked me for anything."
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've heard it all. Tom, I sold door to door, cold call, straight commission for over 10 years and trained it. There's no time to develop a relationship when that's the approach that you are taking. And it's just, you're closing hard, etc. And we have such a phenomenal opportunity. There is really no reason that we can't live in the consultative arena. And Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. Well, if the end is to focus on completely understanding the customer's goals and establishing the business rapport, to me, that's different than the personal rapport, obviously.
No doubt.
You establish that, then I believe that you can really, you don't have to necessarily, to me, starting in consultative from your approach is almost like eliminating an objection before it comes up. Because you don't get into the habit of just establishing personal relationship as your means of getting things done.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I think we've already answered this question in a significant way, but if we bring that consultative approach, that customer mindset versus a relationship, are we likely to overcome more objections? I mean, again, think of both, because I want a great relationship, but I also want to have empathy and value. That equals better relationship, which will undoubtedly help us overcome more objections, close more sales. I mean, enough said, right? Enough said. All right. So we did talk about recon. So again, looking at all the different tactics of the business, understanding where there might be opportunities, not only to augment what we might be trying to sell, but even more so around, just being able to overcome an objection, because we've looked at where shelf space might be. We've looked at where display space might be. We've looked at the menu and the menu boards and the back bar, all the different things. We've looked at it, right? And then this idea of needs, just again, we can't go back to what's most important on their agenda if we don't uncover and confirm their agenda. And how often are we going to do it? Often. How often? On an ongoing basis. I mean, that's enough said, right? Mm-hmm. And then when it's time to sell, we talked about steps, we talked about steps 2, 3, and 4. Recon, uncover the needs, confirm the needs, and pitch. So when we pitch, we've prepped. We've done the prep. We know the compelling features and benefits we're going to mention because we've created them, or maybe our company's created them, but we've rehearsed them. And that's going to allow us to have a compelling pitch, but hopefully we don't get an objection. right? And not only do we come up with the features, but we know how to bridge them to benefits. We know how to, if, again, Paz and Nick, I mean, listen, if we ever are in a situation where we hear someone just mention feature, it's an easy fix.
Mhm.
Just mention the bridge and you'll bridge right to, I just can't look at that without laughing. I just think that's hilarious. Second place. That's pretty funny.
It's
He might have had second place on there for the last 20 minutes. I didn't even look, but when he put,
oh, no, he's had it on there for a while.
oh, I didn't even, yeah. That's actually, that's a perfect new name for Sean.
Second place.
Second. I love that. Love it. All right. So what's the first thing we should do? Sean, let's go ahead and launch that poll. See what our esteemed guests come up with here. Now I'm goofing a little bit, Sean. I picked one of the answers that we obviously wouldn't suggest. That was me.
Let me guess, ignore it.
Yeah, that's what I voted, but I'm kidding. Obviously, we would never do that. So yeah, we would acknowledge it. Nice job. I mean, that's exactly right. We want to obviously not only not ignore it, but acknowledge it means that the customer knows that we understand it. Even if, and it's very likely that we won't agree with their objection. Like, what are the typical objections we get? We get space. No one's ever asked for it. We might get, short on money. I've already given that to your competitor. We're not going to agree with any of those. We're not, even if they say I'm short on cash, they got some cash. Whatever cash they have, they should give it to us so we can give them the best recommendation that can turn that as quickly as possible. Both the folks that are here now, they have things that sell.
Mhm.
So there's ways that we could turn that money quickly if they went our way. We can help them, So acknowledging it does not mean we agree with them. But acknowledging does reset and reestablish rapport, and that's what we're going for. Once we reestablish rapport, we got to go back to the most important thing to the customer, which is not their objection. It is their need, or it is, their goal or their KPI, and then we solve. You don't see anything on here about being defensive, being combative. That's not the way to go, obviously. So we don't want to do that. But what we do want to do is acknowledge it, reset the rapport, which frankly allows us to go back and overcome a second objection, maybe overcome a third objection, because we can continue to acknowledge several times if we had to. There'd be no reason why we couldn't do that. We couldn't do that. And again, what's the easiest way to acknowledge? I understand that space is tight. I appreciate that. And Jim, I love using that same word. I appreciate that space is tight, or I understand. Because as we then get into the second step in handling an objection, which thinks about going back to what's most important, I use that same word again. Hey, I understand space is tight, but I also understand how important profit is. You mentioned earlier how important profit is. Hey, I can appreciate how tight space is. I also appreciate how much you're trying to grow your sales. You mentioned that earlier. I love using that same word just as a way to, again, all we're trying to do is get them to think. Because when they think more about their need and less about the objection, we can close more sales. And that's what we're trying to do. So Nick and Paz, I would be interested to hear, what do you think most salespeople do? I mean, we want them to acknowledge, we want them to focus back, but what do you think most salespeople do? Do they get combative, or do they get defensive? Do they just retreat? What do we think, Nick?
I think a lot of times they're going to walk away from it, and they're going to go down the street to the place where they are going to get a yes without having to deal with the objections.
Yeah, I could see that.
Which makes for a really long day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paz, anything to add to that?
I think it's a mix of both. I think you will have empathetic people that will, kind of recognize and approach it the right way. And there'll be others that, like Nick said, will walk away and we'll go to a yes much quicker than facing an objection.
Yeah, enough said, right?
60% of them will
Yeah.
walk.
And then really the whole idea then of solving it, again, we could go right to the solution, which again goes back to that recon. What did we see in terms of possible plan Bs? But how long does it take to acknowledge and then focus back? It takes seconds. And to reestablish rapport, because we've given them the courtesy of understanding their concern, is just the professional thing to do. And then going back to what's most important is the professional, but oh, by the way, the smartest thing to do. Smarter to get them to focus on their need than to just go, you know what, your space is tight. We should talk about that for a long time. Yeah, let's talk about that for a long time. Let's not talk about your goals. Let's talk about your concerns that really lead to, to nothing, right? Crazy. So pretty simple process. Acknowledge, focus back, solve. Pretty simple to do. So elements of closing, again, there's a lot about asking for the order. I always am amazed, Jim, when we hear so many managers in our industry just complain that I can't get my folks to ask for the order. And I don't know if that's because there's a fear of failure, lack of confidence, just again, that rejection. I don't know. But we got to do that, right?
Being too forward, maybe.
Yeah. But if you knew you could help,
Feeling that you're being too forward, yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't think of it that way. If you knew you were going to help, you wouldn't think of it that way. So obviously thanking them.
A lack of confidence. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, at
Yeah.
the top of the list.
It's the top of the list. Yeah. Record all the details, all the next steps. So again, so the suppliers can, because whenever our suppliers sell, they're not really able to close the loop. That's all through the distributor. So recording all the details, communicating that to the distributor, making sure that you have, all the elements of execution. But it really comes down to this idea, this whole idea of service, of just like this very simple litmus test. And I'm sure, Jimmy, you've preached this to every salesperson you've ever trained and ever worked with and ever led, was this idea of, is the account in a better position as you walk out versus when you walked in?
Yeah, I mean, that was a fundamental. Absolutely. Even if you put a cooler sticker up or a piece, signage, you rearrange, you face the product off, I mean, whatever it might be, but having that mindset that you want to, at the very least, help in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then different techniques, there are some techniques that work. I think the most natural technique would be what we call this trial close, which is basically you are trying to close. So as you're articulating your features and benefits, it's simply checking in. What do you think about this display idea? Can you see how it can make the profit you said you were looking for? Question mark. We're asking for the order. We're trying to close. Does this make sense around this notion of improving your sales? Can you see how this could do that? Because when you try to close, one of three things is going to happen. They're going to say yes, which is what we hope happens. They're going to say no, which means we'll confront the objection. Or number three, they'll just say, oh, sounds okay so far. Tell me more. And guess what? We've got our T-chart. We've got more. So trial close is probably the one that's the easiest to execute and frankly can be very effective. The choice close, again, it's kind of like an assumptive close where you're giving them a couple options. Did you want that display on the end aisle or did you want it more closer to the lobby? You're giving them the control. If you do it wrong, it could be manipulative. So you got to be careful on this one, but it can be very effective. Did you want all four of our new flavors or did you want just two? What did you want?
Tom, I think with either one of these first two closes, a lot of it has to do with being aware of and observing the customer and seeing what their body language is.
Yeah.
If they've been nodding their head, because if, a trial close, just checking in, so what do you think? To your point, they can say, oh yeah, I love it. Let's do it. And it's done. Choice close, I think, is a good opportunity when you may have already checked in, you didn't get any big objection, But between that and getting into the, later part of your presentation, you've seen like positive reaction to your demonstration. And to me, I think that's a perfect opportunity to use the choice close, because then it's not as manipulative. You're kind of making the assumption that they're with you, and it's not going to come across as, well, wait, I didn't say I wanted it yet.
Good call. Urgency, again, can be very effective. Discounts are ending, price increases getting ready to take place. Seasonals are ending, anything limited allocation. This is trying to get someone off the dime, someone who's maybe a little apathetic, getting them to act for good reason, because of any of those scenarios. Summarizing the benefits, if there's ever any kind of a interruption with the customer, be a employee interrupted or a customer, actual patron of their establishment interrupted, and now we're back at it again, go back to what's most important, and that's the benefit that really can align with the needs. So this is the process. And really, when you look at that last 3 steps, that's it. So let's do this here. Any thoughts, Nick? Any thoughts, Paz? I appreciate everyone kind of, jumping in today. We've edited these things down from the 2 and 3 hours to now more hour and 15 to free up, but also hit the content hard. I think we've had a really robust conversation on this. Any thoughts, Nick or Paz, about, any takeaways about for you or for your teams?
I think this is great. Having it in 1 hour, 1 hour and change. I actually have things to do after this as well. So
Absolutely.
I think this is great. Yeah, and I'm gonna be pushing the team to making sure they participate a little more, especially being about an hour long.
Yeah, and they can watch them anytime.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the time is great. It's still a little bit rough for some people on the West Coast.
Yeah.
They can say all they want. They're going to get up at 6 a.m. to do this, and it doesn't end up happening.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And the good news is they can still, I think, get a ton of benefit if they were able to watch it later at their convenience. And we would, again, encourage, anyone who has a want to improve. The discussion we had today, for Sean and Jim has been great. And, and Jim, I'll just say, for someone who is labeled themselves as second place, he does bring a lot to the table. I have to say.
He sure does. I mean, put it this way: if I was in a foursome and I had the opportunity to have somebody who had taken second place in a championship, I'd feel like that's not bad. A pretty good partner to have.
Yeah. Hopefully CJ Stroud gets second place this year
on the podium.
Yeah. Exactly. You're on the podium. There you go.
No, but hey, Nick, just for whatever it's worth, we were thrilled to see that news. We think that's awesome partnership that
well, Nick's at Seattle.
Oh, my bad. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm less enthusiastic about that partnership than Tom might be, for the record. And I wouldn't have any problem saying that to Christian, actually, directly.
Yeah, you're right. Cool. All right. Well, listen, everybody, appreciate the chance to connect. We look forward to having you next month. We're going to get into building sell sheets and rehearsing and practicing, and again, delivering the highest quality content. So enjoy the rest of your day. Great job. And we will see you down the road.
Have a nice weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Pat.